You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts Jon Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Prosper in the Kingdom. Wendy Lee, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy Tuesday.
Nice as well. So, man, what an awesome weekend. Just to toot our own little horn a little bit, everybody. We had our first church-based financial planning session. Really more of an education, not a planning session, but it went very, very well. We had over 85 people in attendance. And it was just awesome because that's really what Prosper in the Kingdom is all about, is getting that message out there. So if you're interested in doing a live event at your church, let us know, reach out to us, and we'll definitely get something set up either live or via Zoom for your folks. But it went very, very well. So I was super excited about that. And so were the people that attended. So now what we're talking about today, we're actually on week 10 of our journey on the blueprint for health, wealth, and wisdom from God's perspective. And today we're talking about what the Bible says about retirement, right? And longevity. You know, you look at the worldly view and it's work hard, retire early, coast into the sunset, right? But is that biblical? I don't know. What do you think, Wendy?
Well, I think we should never be idle. I think there's seasons in life. And at the time that we're not out there doing the grind day to day, there's still, a season to serve and to.
I don't think we're ever designed to stop. My grandmother always said that too. You made me kind of chuckle when you said that about idle hands. She'd always say, "Idle hands are the devil's work, John. Get outside." So, she goes, "Don't be that kid." But no, it's Psalm 92:14 says they will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. So, retirement, although retirement, the definition has really changed, I think, over the generations, as well as, people as an individually, their perspective on retirement. Retirement is not about withdrawal. It's about redirection, right? You're calling in the kingdom, which is what we're talking about here at Prosper in the Kingdom, doesn't have an expiration date, right? There is no, okay, you're 65, so you're expired, right? Just move on down the road. So today we're going to be talking about what the Bible says about long-term planning, purpose, and, as you just said, Wendy, about later seasons and how to prepare practically and spiritually for those years ahead. So we're going to really kind of dive into that. So I don't know if you want to kick us off, Wendy, on kind of what we're talking about as far as the retirement season. So take it away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of said a little bit of it, but yeah, retirement is a season. It's a season in life, and retirement obviously is a term that probably wasn't around in Bible days. But we have our elders, the older age, all of that. But it's not like a checkout. I think sometimes we have this mindset that we're going to work, we're going to stack all this cash, which everyone says they're going to do, but most people don't. And then we're just going to like you said, check out, kind of ride it off into the sunset. Yep. But it's really about shifting your energy, right? It's about, you get to focus on different things. In our working years, we're focusing on, raising the kids, taking care of the family, paying off a house or whatever that is in that season. But then, if I think about my ideal retirement, I'll probably never stop working. I love what I do, and I don't really go grind for, 8 hours a day and something I don't love. Yeah. But it's having that shift of energy and being able, I think, to serve more. Honestly, I feel like retirement is a season you get, whether that be grandkids, whether that be, the church, different efforts that you've wanted to pour into, but work interfered. But it's a time to shift away from like the day-to-day grind at work to serving. I mean, I feel like God can use it so much.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things that, my dad taught me this when I was young. He always told me, he's like, find something you love to do, figure out a way to get paid for it, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's where I'm at too. Much like you just said, I don't know that I'll ever stop. I may slow down as far as the number of hours I put into the financial aspect, the financial planning aspect of what I do. However, I love to teach about the education things, just like we had at the church this weekend. It doesn't feel like work. It's not like I'm out there, doing asphalt or, putting on roofing or anything like that, manual, that hard physical labor. And it's something where you as the listener should really consider that too. It's like, what do I love to do? Where can I plug in and be of value to my church, my family, things like that, to help, that's to serve, right? It's reframe. And that's the way we need to think about retirement, because retirement is not in the Bible. It's not one of the things, okay, you've been a disciple now, you're now 65. So Matthew, we're going to go ahead and give you your watch and you can go back to fishing or what. I mean, imagine if that's the way it was, right? And they all had some strong ways that they left the earthly plane that way as martyrs. But it's one of those things that you need to look at reframing retirement as transitioning into that legacy driven living. What are you doing to leave your mark, in the kingdom and impacting others? Talking about scripture and elders and things like that. God uses older people to guide younger people. That's just, I mean, not that you can't be young and be, influential by any means, but that it's the silver hair right here. This is what I've done and what I've learned along my journey. Let me impart that information, that wisdom to you, so you don't make the same mistakes I did.
The older I get, the more I realize how much wisdom people older than me have.
Yeah, I remember when I was 16, I knew everything. Right? Or so I thought.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, the older you get, the more you realize, the less you know.
Yeah.
And so, that's where God and the kingdom can use you, the listener, to serve others, right? And not only that, it's better to give to receive. We talked about this in a previous episode. The personal reward, not that it's about personal reward, but the personal reward on serving kingdom, is just amazing. Not only that, you're building your treasures in heaven, things like that. So yeah, that retirement, it's a season, it's not a destination. So shift your mindset about that and what you can do. And that's the ability to have the freedom to do that is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And number two, kind of looking at planning financially, you want to make sure you're planning, accordingly, right? Plan financially with a purpose. We've talked about that. I talked about that this weekend at the church event. It's Proverbs 6:6-8. Go to the ant, it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food for harvest. Meaning, you're building towards that goal. What do you want to do? What does your next chapter look like? Once you're done with your career, what does that next chapter look like? And start spending some time, not only thinking about it, but kind of planning for it financially, and the reason is it's to be able to prepare not just for comfort, but for freedom, right? That's the big thing, get out of debt. Debt is bondage, right? Get your financial house in order. So that way you've got your stores for winter, and then you're able to, have your emergency fund set up, and then you can just be free and you can serve the kingdom, right?
Yeah. That freedom to serve. I mean, I look at these, I'm at the baseball field like all the time. So, sorry.
I remember those days. Now I remember those days. Yeah.
I relate everything to baseball. But I sit at those baseball fields and I see, it's so cool seeing all the grandparents, there cheering on their grandkids. And I just, the way, and I look at my own dad and the way he pours into my kids, just wisdom, and oh man, I praise God. My dad is retired and he doesn't have to go. I mean, when I was young, right, I saw him at dinner and that was it for a lot of my life, because he would, be working and then eat with us and then go to sleep so he could wake up to work before we woke up, And so looking at that, plan financially so that you can actually like walk in that purpose that God has for your life in that season. But when we're not planning appropriately and we blow that money, or, especially in this world that we live in today, it's so easy to just blow it, and I feel like we're going to have a generation of grandparents that aren't present if something doesn't change.
Well, and you're right. I mean, I look at my grandparents and, I actually lived with one set of my grandparents for a while, but they were always available because they had, the traditional pension and stuff like that. And it's changed, but we haven't changed with it. Companies don't offer pensions anymore. The government, some of the government still does, but even that's starting to wane a little bit. But it's one of those things, without planning, you're not going to be able to enjoy those later years in life. And it's going to be more challenged because you're less physically, you can't do it like you used to, kind of thing. Right. But, looking at what do you want to do? And I want to stress this. I mean, retirement from a biblical point of view is not about leisure, right? It's not about leisure. Now, don't get me wrong. There's time to play golf. There's time to do things. You can have some leisure in there, but that's not the goal. Really what it is, it's about living without that financial bondage, right? Having your debts paid off, having all those financial monkeys, so to speak, off your back. So you can have the freedom to enjoy the life, but still spend that time, staying productive, because that's, that's going to keep your mind fresh, right? Staying productive, staying involved, staying plugged into younger people, helping them out. That's going to keep you youthful. So there's, again, some big personal rewards in that, but that's the objective of preparing financially with a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So in order to do that, what else do we have to do?
Well, I was going to say that leads right into, right, like taking care of your health for that long term. We actually heard a guy say the other day, if I knew how long I was going to live, I would have taken better care of myself.
Yeah.
You remember hearing that?
Yeah, I did.
And I was like, man, like you don't get a do-over. Like and I thought about that. I mean, I'll tell you, I struggle sometimes with my own eating habits. I mean, I do. Sometimes I'm like, man, which it's hard today's day and age. Real that was like, don't eat chicken that was chilled something, I don't know, because it has chlorine in it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna fast for the rest of my life.
I know, just give me supplements and not even water. It's like, okay, what kind of water do you have, right?
But that activity, like that's one thing I'm focusing on is, it's like I feel like there's only so much I can do with the food. I'm getting overwhelmed with all the do's and don'ts. So I'm going to do my best, but really being active. I mean, you guys, muscle solves a lot of problems, and building that muscle as it is your metabolism source. It is what is going to protect your body against I don't think, which we're not going to go into a science lesson, but your muscle does so much to even help your blood, right? Like, and the junk that might come into your body, your muscle can actually help clear that out. But anyway, so it's important to be strong and to think about our physical health, right? Deuteronomy, Moses, he was 120 years old when he died. And the Bible says, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. Good health is going to help us run the race longer, right? And I think I talked about this last week, but I watched a lady 100 years old doing planks, and just like your muscle also helps your cognitive health too. They're starting to see in studies a direct correlation being physically fit and having your mind. And think about taking this. Go ahead.
No, I was just to say your muscles. I mean, that's another organ system in your body. I mean, it's not just so I can lift stuff and walk and things like that. It actually does a lot more, which, it sounds like you're leading into, and because of that, it helps a lot of other systems in your body have longevity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's our longevity superpower.
Yeah. And it also helps you get through, with less pain later in life and things like that. But that's why it's, just like financial resources that God has given you. And, it's also the physical resources, which is your body that you're inhabiting. Right. and making sure you take care of it and things like that, but creating that long-term rhythm that supports, health. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger by any means,
Right.
but something that's moving your body, creating that strength, flexibility, and that mental clarity you were talking about, is really going to help you go longer. And a lot of people, well, Moses, 120 people don't live that long anymore. Well, the question, ask why, number one. Two, it's not that they don't live that long. It's not quite as long. My grandmother, for example, passed away at 103.
Mhm.
That's only 17 years younger. I mean, the 17 years is
Yeah.
17 years, but still, it's not like, we're passing away at 70 now, but some people do, some people younger or whatever, because of accidents or whatnot. But again, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing to keep my body in shape so I can enjoy my later years when I am free of financial bondage? And that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
The worst thing would be able to do the financial part, get there, and then you just can't
Right.
physically do it anymore. I mean, we had a family in for graduation. My daughter graduated from University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Congratulations. Show her a little love. I'll put her Instagram on in the link. But it's one of those things that we had some family that were there and no big deal. Some family, couldn't go to certain events because they just couldn't get around and things like that. The older family members, but it's something that you want to take care of it. I mean, it's the one body you're given, and just making sure you're eating right and doing what you can. Like you said, sometimes it feels a little overwhelming with everything that's going on now. I think there's a big, great awakening. But baby steps, just point yourself in the right direction and keep going that way, right? One step at a time. It doesn't have to be solve everything overnight. So don't get frustrated with it. But again, that's going to lead into that. What's next? What's that next chapter? Going back to what I said earlier about leaving your mark, leaving that legacy that outlives you, right? That should be the objective. Proverbs 13:22, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. I taught on that this weekend. And it's one of those things that some people I've talked to in the financial side, well, I had to figure it out so my kids can too. It's like, wow, and your father in heaven wants you to succeed, right? So you want to make sure that you impart not just a chunk of money to your family. That's not what a true legacy is. It's more than money. It's about your faith, right? The wisdom that you've learned along the way. And that includes financial wisdom. You should be teaching your children this as early as kindergarten. You should be teaching them about money, parting, if you give them an allowance, showing them what tithing is, saving is, and stuff like that. And that's how you're going to make that financial impact, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, thinking about, how to bless our kids and create, well, you said it, like that legacy of impact. I love hearing people say, oh, my grandmother taught me, my great grandmother taught me.
Mhm.
And we're going to pass something down, right? And
Yeah.
so
They're watching you, whether you like it or not, they're watching you.
So let's, be intentional with passing on that wisdom. That's another reason just to be healthy and free in your later years, to be able to spend that time to pass on and mentor younger people, and pass that legacy on.
Yeah.
And then just, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one thing, I want to challenge as an action step, right? You look at, are you headed in the right direction? And this is powerful. This is somebody, and I didn't create this concept, but somebody shared it with me, and it was pretty powerful. Is to take a few minutes, and for the listeners out there, take a few minutes tonight or tomorrow morning over coffee and write down what you want your eulogy to be when you pass away. Right? And be truthful. What do you want? What do you want people to say about your giving, your attitude, your demeanor, how you were with people? And then ask yourself, is that who I am? And if it's not, now you kind of know the direction you need to start going into. And again, don't get frustrated with it. Don't be defeated by it. But now you have a direction that you can start heading into one step at a time, to make sure you live up to that person that you want to be. So that would be an action. Again, legacy is not just about a financial inheritance. It's about an inheritance of you. Who are you? What impact did you make in somebody's life? And it doesn't necessarily have to be family either. So kind of food for thought on that one. So the last one, number 5, is staying active, purpose and community. And this goes back to what, Wendy, you were talking about, and kind of jump in on that about staying plugged in with people, right?
Yeah. I love this. There's no retirement in the kingdom, just new assignments and wisdom to share. Right. And the older you get, some people might be watching this that are younger that are like, okay, but I know for me, like, it's like once I hit my 40s, I realized I love sitting with, people in retirement age. I love hearing what they have to say. I love that wisdom.
Stories.
Yeah, the stories and in the Word of God, right? It talks about like for older men and women to teach and lead, because there is wisdom that comes with time that you can't achieve without the time. You just can't. And so being active and serving and living out purpose in your later years, I just think is so powerful. And God can use those, seasoned believers to help shape families, to help shape churches and even businesses. I think about like John Maxwell.
Yeah.
I heard him speak
Love
live.
John Maxwell. Yep.
Yeah. Probably a year and a half ago. And he's in his 70s and he just sits on a stool on the stage and just pours out wisdom, you know? And, somebody asked him, when are you going to retire? He's like, never. I'm doing what I'm called to do.
Bam. That's what I was. Find something you love to do that you're called to do, figure out a way to make an income from it. And then boom, there you go. Yeah. I mean, think about that too. I mean, so you look at, I'm 55. If I'm talking to somebody who's 35, right? Mm-hmm. And they're coming into their family years and whatnot. And I'm imparting with them the things that I struggled with or maybe failed at. And, if they take that knowledge in, they've just fast-tracked 20 years of learning into a short period of time. So now they've got a 20-year jump on where I'm at, right? This is important, parents, in talking to your kids about things, right? And get them to listen. And it's not just telling them what to do, but the whys behind it. What did you struggle with? Be transparent. Obviously, use your own judgment when you're talking to your kids or any kids. But it's one of those things that, you paying that forward, you sharing that wisdom is going to help the next generation, whether it's your family, your friend's family, or whatever the case may be. Now, if they choose not to take it, that's on them, but you've done your part, right? And it gives them that much of a head start. And that's, I love hearing the stories, like you said, from the older generation. My dad was in town this last weekend. He took off this morning, actually, back to Baltimore. But you look at, we went through some antique stores. He's got a shop out in the East Coast where he's got knickknacks and those knickknack stores and stuff. We were going through and he's like, hey, do you know what this is? And I'm like, it was a little machine, right? It was a metal machine. You hand cranked it or whatever. And I'm like, I have no idea. And I took a wild guess, wasn't even close. And he shared that with me. And not that I'd ever use one or anything, but it's neat to know, oh, that's what that is. Right. Yeah. So that's just a very simple example. But you as a parent or maybe a grandparent listening to this, you've taken out auto loans, you've bought houses before, things like that. Make sure you're talking to your children. That's one of the things my kids, I said, look, you're going to be on your own journey, but don't ever sign anything without talking to me first. Not that I'm going to tell you yes or no. It's your decision. I just want to be able to impart my knowledge of what's going on and what to look for. So that going into it, as opposed to learning how I did, which was through failure. Right.
Yeah. Help fast track the younger generation to success by teaching them.
That's right.
The ways we fail. Sure.
Yeah. I love what you said too. There's no retirement. It's just new assignments. That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to write that one down. So, all right. So the challenge for everybody, find one way to serve this month in your church, whether it's to teach, mentor someone younger, and maybe not even in your church. Maybe it's the next door neighbor kid or, coming from a single household or whatever it may be, a single parent household or whatever. But just find a way to serve somebody and share with them. And I want you to ask and drop this in the comments. What's your biggest fear or hope that you have for retirement for yourself? Right. Drop that in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Next week, we're on week 11 of this 12-week series, right? Protecting your wealth and health with wisdom. So make sure you're subscribing to our channel, whether you're listening to us on one of our podcast formats or on YouTube. We've got great videos on YouTube as well. Let's share the knowledge with that younger generation and help them jump even faster and more forward than we are at our age. So everybody have a great week. And again, congratulations to my daughter, Grace, for wrapping up college at University of Tennessee. And if you're listening to this, give her a shout out on Instagram. So bye, everybody. See you next week.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.